This is an interview for the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute Oral History Project with Margaret Givner Brown on June 13th, 1996, 2 p.m. at the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. How are you?
Fine.
Good. Did you grow up in Birmingham?
Yes, I did.
You did? What area?
In Titusville.
Uh-huh. And where did you live in Titusville? Do you remember?
On
Kappa Avenue
Yes.
Street or
Yes.
Kappa Street or Avenue?
Kappa Street.
Street.
Mm-hmm.
You have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I have 5 sisters.
No
brothers.
No brothers. So your father really had a time on his hands with 5 girls?
6 in all, counting myself.
Okay, so 6 girls
Yes.
and a wife. So 7 ladies in the house. So I guess he was spoiled then, I would imagine.
Sort of.
Sort of?
Yes.
What do you remember about your childhood growing up? When do you remember yourself, at the age of 5 or 7 or 4? Or what do you remember when you remember you?
Well, I was a happy, normal, regular 5-year-old.
So you can remember
Yes,
yourself
I can remember, yes.
as early as 5?
As early as 5, yes.
What was your community like where you lived?
Where it was just, it wasn't the suburbs or anything, but it was nice. It was just, at that time to me, it was just an ordinary community.
Really nice block that you lived in?
Fair.
Fair?
I would say fair.
Did your mom work outside of the home?
She did small work, nothing too much. She worked at a school. And,
Oh, did she?
yes.
Which school did she work?
Well, I think she did. She worked at Berry, if I'm not mistaken. She was. She worked in the nutritional part where they cook food and stuff like that.
What about your dad? What did he do?
He was a porter at A&P.
What does a porter do?
Well, porter does a little of everything, whatever needs to be done. Like they would sometimes unload the trucks when they would come into the warehouse part, and whatever needed to take mail, whatever needed to be done, he was there to do that.
They stayed there a long time?
Oh, 27 years, I think.
Did he?
Yes, he stayed a long time.
So did he retire from there, or did he go to another job?
No, A&P closed suddenly on him, and so he was left without a job.
That must have been very difficult.
It was.
Do you remember, we're kind of going back and forth here, do you remember about what age you were when the store closed?
Oh, I was 20-something. That was, well, not 20, I'm sorry. I was about 15.
About 15?
Yes, about 15.
When the store closed. So in terms of the number of kids, and the 6 kids, where did you come in? Older, younger, middle, where?
At the end.
Oh, you're the baby?
I'm the knee baby.
Oh, knee baby.
Yes, knee baby.
Does that mean you came to the knee? Is that what that means?
I was at the end, almost at the very end.
Okay.
Or almost the last child to be born. It was one more after me.
Okay.
So I'm at the very end almost.
Okay, so that's what a knee baby is. Okay, so your dad, you were 15, so certainly I guess you can remember when the store closed. What did the family, what did you overhear your parents say, or did they bring everybody together and Dad says, well, the store's closed and we have to buckle down, or what happened?
Well, at that time, it was hard. You know, it was hard. But now that was years after the demonstration and all of this.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just hard, but we managed to get along, and eventually they had a suit against the company, so that way money came in. And,
so he and some other people sued A&P?
Yes.
Because of?
The way in which they ended the job without letting them know anything about it.
So your dad worked at A&P, and you were next to the last baby. Were you very active, your family, were you very active in any particular church?
Yes, we were all members of the New Pilgrim Baptist Church. And my father was deacon. He was one while he was head of the deacon board.
Oh.
And my mother was a deaconess.
So that meant the kids were active in church too?
Yes, my older sister sang in the choir, and I was an usher, and we were very active.
So was this something that you wanted to be an usher? Was that something to
Yes.
really be proud of, that when I get a little older, I would like to be an usher, or once in a while, I'm going to sing in the choir? Or was it something that parents said, well, you're going to be an usher and you're going to sing in the choir? How did that work?
No, that was something that I wanted to do. I enjoy standing up watching the people as they come in, and I like serving, so I enjoy seating people, seating people and things like that. So it was something that I wanted to do.
Really enjoyable.
Yes.
What about school? Where did you attend elementary school?
Okay, I attended Washington Elementary.
And what kind of experience did you have there? Do you remember who your principal or any of your teachers?
Okay, my principal name was Mr. Moore, and I remember Mrs. Jones. I had she was one of my favorite teachers, and Miss Piggies and several others.
And after you finished Washington, where did you went to high school, or was it a
Yes.
middle school after that? Or?
I went into Ullman. I attended Ullman for 2 years. And then from Ullman, where they closed it down, so I had to go to Parker to finish out my other 2 years.
Were you sad, or did you want to stay at
I
home?
was sad. I was sad until I got there, and then I fit in,
It became okay.
Yes.
Your church, you said you were an usher, and your family was very active at the church. What kind of community at home and at the church, how was it as it relates to the movement? Do you remember anything about the civil rights movement, or SCLC, or NAACP? Excuse me.
Do you mean as I grew older or when I was younger?
When you were younger.
Yes, I remember what participated. Our church were one of the churches that I believe they started in.
Oh, really?
And so therefore we would come to all of the meetings that they had in the evening times, and it was kind of exciting,
What do you recall, or do you recall anything at the meetings? Was Reverend Smith over the meetings, or was he the pastor then, or was it somebody else? Or what were some of the things that the men and women talked about?
Okay. I remember, yes, Reverend Smith he would, I guess, turn it over to Reverend, I think it was Shuttlesworth. I remember him, and I remember he would come in, and I remember he would, like, always introduce, he wouldn't all the time introduce Dr. King. It would be Reverend Abernathy would always, he would always come up first, and then he would be the one to get the crowd roaring for Dr. King whenever he would come up.
What do you recall him saying, or things that people said? Do you remember any of it? Was it exciting? Like, oh, wow.
I remember he would say, like, fireball. He would use the term fireball, and being a child, that drew my attention. I remember that, and I remember the excitement that the people would have,
Because then you got an opportunity at a very young age to see Reverend Shuttlesworth,
Yes.
Reverend Abernathy, and Reverend King. What do you remember about Reverend Abernathy and King and Shuttlesworth? And even, I know when we talk about Reverend Smith, a lot of people refer to him as N.H. Fireball Smith. But what do you remember about those men then?
Well, I remember them being very outspoken as far as, as a child. I remember that they would it would be exciting. All I remember is when they talked, we listened. And they had a way about them that they could calm a crowd, and what they had to say. Even a child, it was interesting. It was something to hold my attention,
Did you recall your parents saying anything about the meetings, perhaps after the meetings were over with, or when you came home? Did they say anything? Well, they're going to have a march, or
yes.
this is going to have, what do you recall them saying?
Oh, yes. I remember it was a time where it was scary and it was exciting at the same time. Because when they would come home, they would tell us to be very careful, that things would probably happen that we wouldn't understand right off. But if we had anything that we wanted to ask them about, we could always ask them about it,
Really?
And it was just, exciting to me.
Did you have, you said you were excited, but you were also kind of scared.
Oh, very fearful. Because I remember them telling us that, I remember hearing my dad say that, I guess when the marches were getting started, that they had come on the job and they were asking, was anybody a part of it? And it was hush-hush among the men that was there, the black men that was there, you know. And a lot of them, as the movement began to grow and develop, then more and more they would, by us being a part of it, I remember hearing my father say a lot of the employees black employees would draw away from him, you know, because they didn't, I guess like they disassociated themselves with him.
Yeah.
Because they was afraid at that time. All I remember is that it was a lot of fear too, because they didn't know what was happening, what would happen to them, you know.
Sure.
So you
said they came on the job and wanted to know who was involved.
Yeah, well, it was.
You say they, who came?
No. What they did, they were discussing it on the job. And I remember hearing my father when he came home telling my mom that it was a part of that discussion as to who was in it and who would not.
His employers, like
yes,
his boss.
Employers, exactly.
So
exactly.
They would be people that were Caucasian or black people?
Black, you know, because they didn't know whether or not they were participating in. They just, some was for it and some was against it. I imagine that's probably what it was.
So I guess too, as youngsters, what did you and your sisters, since you're one of the younger ones, did the older ones did you guys kind of get together away from your parents at home and talk about, what's going to happen? Or do you remember anything that your sisters
may have said? My older sisters, they would say something about it. But my sister that was 3 years above me, many of us right together, she would ask me, did I want to participate? And she would tell me, I want to go, you know. And I think talking to her, that kind of motivated me to want to go. Because I remember the day that I did march, that she had told me, we had talked about it the night before, just me and her.
What did you say? Mom and Dad and everybody's sleeping. She says, Margaret.
She said, I want to go.
Take us back and pretend that this is when you were a youngster and Mom and Dad and your other sisters are asleep. And you and your other sisters, take us back so we can envision.
Okay. I remember we were out, had been playing earlier that day, and late on that night when we were in the room getting ready for bed, my sister told me, she said, well, I want to go. I really want to go and participate. She said, I'm not afraid, you know. And so I said, well, they say dogs are there. You know, I've seen the dogs. And she said, but I'm not afraid. You know, she said, I want to go. And so she said, I just believe that I'll be all right. And so I said, I remember saying, well, if you go, I want to go. And I guess by her, the confidence that she had, and she didn't have any fear, that made me not have fear. It made me more curious as to what was it all about, you know. So,
okay, and you didn't say anything to your parents?
The next day we, and this was leading up to the very first time, and really the only time I did participate. But the next morning, we had both gone to my mom, and my sister told her what she wanted to do because we heard that it would be a march the next day. And we asked her both, could we go? And she was a little reluctant. She kind of pulled back. She said, not both of you. But my older sister said, well, I'll take care, you know. And then she gave us permission to go.
And your dad, of course, had already probably gone to work.
He was at work.
So where were you in school at that time?
I was attending Washington.
Oh, you were a little girl. You were
Yes.
still in elementary school.
Very little, yeah.
What age were you?
Well, I was 8 years old, but
About
I was so small that, you know, they thought I was younger, but I was 8.
And what age was your sister? About 10 or 11?
12, I believe.
12? Okay. So this was during the school time that this march?
It was in the summer.
Oh, it was in summer, so school was out.
School was out.
So you went down, you knew what time the march was going to take place. Do you remember about what time it was? Was it noon?
We went in the morning. I think about, it was early, I guess about 8 or 9.
How did you get there? Did you walk or ride the bus?
No, my mom had a friend to drop us off. And that's how we came.
Where did the march take place?
Right at 60th Street Baptist Church.
When you got there, were there other people there?
Oh, yes.
A lot of people?
Uh-huh.
How did you feel then as you approached the church? Was it like, okay, I don't think I want to do this?
No.
Or I'm really excited. Look at all the
Very
people.
excited.
What did
But
you?
it wasn't a whole lot, but it was a, let me see, people had begun to come.
Okay.
You know, and I guess waiting for the time, it looked like it was the longest time, just getting prepared to go. But during that time, we sat in and listened to instructions and all. And
Who gave the instructions and what were they?
I don't remember exactly who that person was, but I do remember him saying that no comments. If something come around, if they ask you something, if they want to know about your parents or anything, say no comment. So I do remember that. That was part of my instructions.
And they did ask you questions?
Uh,
Well, let's go before you get to the demonstration. So they got everybody together to do the marching. And where you marched from the church
yes, we did.
to where?
We were on the other side of, we wasn't that far from the church. I think we had made it to over to the park. Cross
To Kelly Ingram Park?
To Kelly Ingram Park. We had made it to the street over from Kelly Ingram Park.
Okay.
And there, that's when the policeman stopped us. And I should say, we were in twos. I remember that. We were marching in twos, and me and my sister were together. And right as we turned the corner, that's when the police stopped us.
You remember what they said?
Well, they told us they asked the people that were in front of us, did we have a permit? And I don't know, all I know is that, I don't know what the response was, but I remember them telling us then to line up against it was a fence, and to line up against the fence.
And you were only 8 or 9 years of age.
Yes.
So you're a little girl.
Yes.
And so now you're like a criminal, an 8-year-old criminal. You're lining up against the fence. At least that's the way they looked at it, that they thought you were doing something wrong. Were you scared then yet?
No, I was excited.
Oh, this is really exciting.
This is really happening.
But I was excited. This is going to be exciting, right?
That was what was going through my mind. And I know I did everything that they said because I lined up against the fence. But I was very excited and a little curious to what would happen, you know. But I guess more excited than anything.
So you lined up against the wall, against the fence. And then what? Take us on through that.
Okay, then they had these, I guess you call them paddy wagons. They put us in the back. That's where it was a truck that you can only had a little window that you can see out of the back. And it's either the back or the side or another one on the side. I remember looking out. But they took us down to a place. It was a big place. At that time, I didn't know where it was. But then later, because they took us the back way. I was used to seeing the jail the front way, but they took us the back way. And then later, I found out that it was to see the jail. And when we got there, and I guess they noticed that we were small, they told us they took us to a room, and then we wasn't there long. Then a bus came, and we loaded back up and got on the bus, and they took us then to juvenile hall.
And what happened there? Did you get fingerprinted and all that?
Well, no, I don't remember being fingerprinted. I remember being placed in a room with some more girls, and they were much older than I was. And matter of fact, that was exciting for me because they all petted me. I was so small. And they were like big sisters for me.
They kind of took you under their wing.
Oh, yes, they were very sweet to me. And I remember we stayed in there until later that evening. I guess they was trying to decide what to do with us. But we were there, and there was a lot of them. And I remember looking at the news because they had a TV in there. We could see everything that was happening on the news.
Okay, and on the news, did they mention anything about?
I remember them saying they wanted to get my attention. They wanted me to see because I imagine at that time, by me being so small, that they had filmed me, you know, and they wanted me to see it. But it was so many of us, and by the time I got a chance to see it, it was gone. But they had it on the news.
So you went to jail. You were 8 or 9 years of age. Did anybody call your parents that day when you got locked up?
I don't know. They didn't. They asked us who our parents were, and they asked us where did we live and our number, and they said they wanted it so they could call our parents,
Mhm.
but we didn't tell them anything.
So how long did you stay in jail?
5 days.
5 days, you and your
5 days.
sister.
Yes. Mhm.
What was she saying? Did she say, oh, we're going to get in trouble, or Mom and Dad's going to be worried about us, or?
No, because we had talked with our parents before we left, and they told us that, they told her to look after me.
Mhm.
And so they knew where we were, and we knew that they knew where we were,
Sure. Mhm.
And so we wasn't wondering about whether or not they would be upset.
Mhm.
While we were there, it was fun for us because when they did lock us up, we had to pass the time by singing and playing little things like that.
Mhm.
So it wasn't fearful as far as, passing the time.
Okay. What was the food like? Or were you really hungry, or?
We had a routine that we went through with, we was fed 3 meals a day, and it was a rule that if we were late, when it was time to go, like if they came that morning at 6 to get us and we wasn't ready to go, well, we wouldn't eat. They wouldn't let us come down to
Really?
eat if we wasn't in the line ready to go out.
So you had to follow the rules and be on time for everything.
Exactly.
So as you came out of that experience, and different things happened in the South, particularly in Birmingham, did you ever look back at it and say, boy, I was really young, but I did make a difference?
Yes, I did. I really did. Even with my own kids, as I grew older and had my own kids, and I told them about what was, what had happened. Even though I think that what I did was a very small part, I knew that it was important as the years went on because of all the things that, have happened since then.
Mm-hmm. But though if you look at it and saying it's a small part, it is a big part, because if everybody who did just that one small part, it makes the whole, and it does make a difference, no matter how insignificant it may seem to the doer. For those on the receiving end, that's a great responsibility to take upon oneself to march during those times. When you
also, I don't mean to
no,
talk,
go
but
ahead.
I just wanted to say that it was time. I know one incident during that time that made me know afterward that how important it was and how dangerous it was. But I thank God He brought us through. We had I wasn't the only one. I have 5 other sisters, as I said, and all of them went to jail.
Really?
And as they, all but one. And when I got out, when our incident was over with, we would always share what had happened to the other. And it was, I had one sister that was put in the sweat box, and she had a rough time. I had another sister that the fire hydrant was turned on,
Really?
and the dogs was really there. And so I know what I was doing was important. It wasn't that it was a small part at that time, but I know that it was important.
When you look back at that, and I don't know whether you've shared that with other children, nieces or whatever, or your own children, and when you see file film, or even if you've been to the Civil Rights Institute, have you been to the Institute?
Yes, I have.
And when you look at all that, first of all, I ask you one question. What about when you talk to your relatives, children, nieces, nephews, or your own children, and you see an old movie or some file film and say, yeah, I participated, I did so-and-so. What do they say? Oh, that was in the olden days, you didn't really do that. Or do they say, did you really tell us about it?
The very first time I shared my experience with any other child was when I was young myself. And I remember doing it at school. And they were, at first, when I had to give them a report. And that was my report. I wanted to tell them about my incident. And when I went up, at first the kids made fun, but later on, they were just spellbound. And that's when I really, and as I grew older with my own kids, like I said, they listened. They compare, and a lot of times, even in the school system, when I talk with them, they said, oh, Miss Brown, it wasn't that bad. The kids just can't imagine that things went on like they did. They just can't imagine that ever happened.
And what about when they've seen the Institute, any of them, and then they see the bus, they see the fountains, they see all that? Do they say, is this for real? Or is this like a movie? Or what do they say?
They are really amazed. They are I had when the museum first opened, I brought my son, I think it was my son, middle son, and he was really amazed. He really was. And he was just saying that he just didn't believe. He said, "You don't tell me, Mom," said the law, but the law should be able to help. I don't see where the law would allow them to do that. So they would be, but then I told him that at the time that was the law, that we couldn't go different places, And it's very hard, even all my kids, it's hard for them to really, now they understand it better. But earlier they didn't understand that the law could do that.
And the thing about it too, I guess you could look at it and say, well, when you look back, even though you have children, it really wasn't that long ago.
No, it's not.
And how was it for you when you came to the Institute? Did you have flashbacks, or was it an emotional time for you, or were you with somebody or by yourself? How would you talk to us and tell us about
Okay, when I first came, I was with my husband. And it was exciting. It brought back a lot of memories, It really did.
And you said, I can't believe I really did that. Or we've talked to some people who said that it was very emotional, but even men who said it brought tears to their eyes when they came here to the Institute and then think and look back about them being involved, how emotional it was, a good feeling, but different.
Exactly.
Did you experience any of that?
It was everything that you mentioned, that there was sadness and but like I said, it was a time that we went through it, and something that had to be.
When you talk with your husband about it, and I don't know if you grew up together, so did he know you when you were a little girl?
No.
So when you would tell him, and did he say, "Oh, girl, you're just, you didn't do that"?
No.
And then he said, "Or did you?" Or what did
he wasn't like that at all. All he would say is that he hated that he couldn't participate, and he hated that he missed out on that chance. But he was so small, his parents didn't allow it. But he didn't say as though, talk to me, so I did not participate.
What about your involvement, and when you look at your church, you said you were at New Pilgrim Church, they played a very big role.
Yes.
I guess that made you very proud of your church.
It did.
What are some of the things, what about Reverend Smith? Had he ever been, to your knowledge, did your father or anybody in the movement ever talk about him being threatened or his house being bombed or something?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
What
There was
did he
several. Especially when we had a member that was beaten. I remember hearing him talk about Reverend Billups, and he and Dr. Smith was close. And I remember them saying that they had beat him to death. They had found his body in a car, and that they were. I was small myself, but I remember hearing them say that. And it was just a constant fear that all their lives were in danger. But at the same time, we were still motivated to go on. It wasn't the fear that kept us from doing it. It was the fear that made us want to do more.
Sure, that if we didn't,
exactly.
it would never be.
That's right.
What about the movement, in your opinion, then, when you look back at organizations like SCLC, NAACP, you look at them then, do you think they were worth it? Was it worth it being involved? Were they good? And then when you look at the movement today, you look at SCLC, NAACP, those kinds of organizations, what is the difference, or is there any difference in your opinion, then and now? What about then?
There's a difference now. Then it was very needed, and it is needed today. But it was just, we put more faith and confidence in it then, because they were right there with us. Now the kids today they don't know about it. They don't, very few. My daughter had since was involved in the movement, the NAACP movement, but she was telling me a lot of the kids, they wasn't aware of it. They didn't know what was going on. And I know when we were coming up, that was all we talked about, the NAACP, the movements, and even the movements where, before the marches and things. So they now they're kind of like the young kids are out of touch with it. And
Do you think they need to be in touch?
they do need to be in touch, exactly.
Before we close, how would you say they can get in touch with
Through
the
the school
movement?
system, if they would maybe have different programs to involve them, yeah, I believe that would help. That's my opinion. Then through the churches, that would help a lot too.
Do you think that some churches have gotten away from those
Yes, I
kinds
do.
of things and they're doing other kinds of things?
Yes, exactly.
So that the church
Yes.
got more involved.
Mhm.
Is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to share with us?
No, I think we covered it.
If you could say something to encourage somebody to come to the Civil Rights Institute and see a part of history that took place, how would you invite them? How would you get them to, what would you say to them?
I would really advise them to come because this is history. And this is something that really, matter of fact, when they look at where they are today, and they have a long ways yet to go, but if they think about the struggle that we had in the back, before all of the fine cars and the nice houses came about, you know, they need to know that where they came from to appreciate where they are and where they're going in the future. So I advise them to please come.
Well, we certainly thank you for sharing with us today.
It's a pleasure.
Okay.